Thank you, and I apologize for speaking English, but it's a lot easier for me. I want to welcome all of you to the 6th International Convention of the Russian International Studies Association. Let me first thank the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Karasin, and MGIMO University Rector, Dr. Tarkunov, Vice Rector, Dr. Bogaturov, and other organizers of the convention for hosting such a great event and for giving me the opportunity to participate along with such distinguished scholars from around the world. I am honored to be here representing the Association for Slavic, East European, and Eurasian Studies. Some of you know us by our previous name, which is AASS, the American Association for the Advancement of Slavic Studies. Founded in 1948, our association with 3,500 members is the premier scholarly society that promotes the study of Russia and this whole region, particularly in North America. As our recent name change indicates, that is, we removed the word American and added East European and Eurasian in our title, we are interested in broadening our appeal and enhancing our international ties with other associations and institutions, particularly in Russia. So we are especially delighted by the RISA invitation and look forward to further collaboration between two societies, two associations. So I was asked to speak a little bit about the theme of the convention. So the theme of the convention is Russia and the world after the global crisis, new challenges and new opportunities. Certainly the crisis of 2008 was a grave global event that affected all of us, some worse than others, as workers, consumers, taxpayers in our respective nations, and also as scholars who often rely on government and foundation funding for our research. It certainly affected academic hiring in the United States, where faculty searches were suddenly frozen and new hires were denied. Although this has improved somewhat this year, there is no denying the major impact that the crisis had on U.S. higher education and U.S. universities. The crisis also had a huge impact, of course, on U.S. politics, as you know. President Obama was elected in November 2008, in part because of John McCain's mishandling of the crisis in September, the way he handled that situation. But 2 years later in the US, we now have the rise of the Tea Party, whose anxious and angry members have shown strong anti-government and anti-immigration sentiments. They call President Obama's policies socialist and even worse, communist, and often show extreme xenophobic sides to them. But unfortunately, this is not strictly an American phenomenon, as recent elections, even in Europe, has shown, especially in relation to immigration policies. Many people seem to be particularly interested in putting their hands up and saying no to globalization. They want to build walls around national borders. And I do think that this is one of the main political challenges of the 2008 crisis. Another challenge is the scholarship. Why did the 2008 crisis come about so unexpectedly, even to leading economists and experts of finance? Why did the specialists so gravely underestimate the global impact of the US subprime mortgage market and the fall of the Lehman Brothers, for instance? It seems doubly shocking that the experts were so unprepared, since they should have learned some lessons from the 1997 Asian financial crisis, whose impact Russia knows only too painfully well. Financial experts and actors, bankers and policymakers and so on, were ill-equipped to quickly see the global impact of the 97 crisis and to prevent the negative factors from spreading. However, many saw the 97 crisis as a regional Asian phenomenon and did not learn enough lessons globally from that. Oddly, there seems to be a lack of understanding of global connectedness of our economic as well as social lives. As we gather here today for an international studies conference, it seems to me that we all have more work to do to show not just other scholars and policymakers, but to the anxious public that the international, indeed global connections that are embedded in our national economic structures, but also in our everyday lives, and that it is indeed counterproductive to build national barriers as a remedy to the crisis. Well, as we like to say in the US, when you have lemons, you make lemonade. So what are the opportunities, particularly for Russia? I in no way pretend to be an expert on these matters, but it seems to me that the current situation could provide an opportunity for greater cooperation between Russia, the US, and the EU, and the rest of the world, certainly. Deeper economic ties, more trade and investment, greater integration of both US and Russia, in particular, into the international financial structures for greater stability. Instead of putting up barriers, we could all have greater cooperation and integration, not just in the economic sphere, but in the political arena, especially in nuclear disarmament. But we all know that this takes political will on all sides and the support of the domestic public, which at a time of crisis, it's hard to come by. Well, I leave you with one final thought. Another outcome of the crisis may be an equalization of sorts of economic power from the US to other parts of the world, especially the countries, the BRIC countries, especially China. But one interesting thought for me is, comes with an anecdote. On my flight from New York to Moscow, just the other day, I sat next to a young Russian man who had lived for many years in New York, working as a DJ, but has decided to move back to Moscow because there was more work here than in New York nowadays. But although he's moving to Moscow, he also works all over the world, in essence. He works in Moscow, St. Petersburg, Berlin, New York, Istanbul, Shanghai. As we gather here in this mega city that is Moscow, as a recent article in Foreign Policy noted, perhaps a new urban age has begun. Moscow and New York probably have more economic ties and alliances than Moscow possibly has, perhaps with the remote rural parts of Siberia. So I ask you, how important is the nation in international studies? Perhaps we should all now be part of Inter-Urban Studies Association instead. Of course, I'm joking. I'll stop here. I look forward to hearing your research on the crisis and many other topics at this convention. Thank you. Спасибо.